Well, I think considering the heavy criticism of the outgoing administration's policies in Syria and their lack of effectiveness dealing with a lot of the alleged lack of effectiveness dealing with the Islamic State threat will lead the incoming administration to pursue some changes in policy. I think the outgoing administration has made significant strides and has had an effective policies on the ground supporting the Kurds in both Iraq and Syria. However, the incoming administration will seek to increase its aid to the Kurds in probably both Iraq and Syria. I think what has changed since the campaign during the period of heavy criticism of the Obama administration is the dynamic between the United States, Russia, and Turkey in the region. Specifically, the fallout from the Russian interference in the recent U.S. election. While there may have been, significant talk about engaging the Russian government on making progress in Syria, I think that's going to be more difficult for the incoming administration to do. And depending on what happens with U.S. relations with Turkey, especially given the recent deterioration, I think it remains to be seen what the political outcome will be on the ground. So while we will probably see increased military aid, the extent to which the political situation in the U.S. support for the Kurds changes is still an open question, especially if the relations with Turkey improve. So I think, again, the political situation, I don't think right now will change with the incoming administration. Not because the incoming administration does not support the Kurds, but I think, essentially with the importance of NATO as bolstering U.S. foreign policy, against the increasing Russian threat and Russian aggression abroad, will, promote engagement, increase engagement with Turkey on a lot of issues on the ground. And I think that will force the administration to, continue the current policy of supporting the Kurds as much as they can, but refraining from any sort of support for a Kurdish independence or an independent Kurdish state in the area. Kurdish forces or Kurdish independence in Syria? So I think the outgoing administration has been extremely effective in balancing the situation on the ground in Syria in terms of providing effective support both for the Syrian Democratic Forces and in managing the political situation. As we've seen, it's becoming increasingly complex, especially with the Al-Bab offensive by the Turkish army. And the current administration's policies, have to a significant extent manage the dynamic there. I think that the incoming administration will continue to support Syrian fighters on the ground in Syria because they are the most effective fighting force fighting the Islamic State. And the Islamic State, as the current and incoming administrations have said, is a top priority for Iraq and Syria right now. So support will continue. Military support, I think, will increase. Especially as the fight for Raqqa, continues to rage. However, I do think there will be limits to that support because as the importance of Turkey's role in the region continues to remain, and objections to certain types of support for the Kurdish fighters will continue. I think that will limit what the incoming administration is able to do if it wants to preserve its the NATO alliance and the NATO's positioning against Russian aggression.